Hi, I'm Revell Dixon, and I am a black man with glasses, with a black hat and wearing a dark grey jacket. Welcome to Journey into Art, where I interview creative individuals who are well known in the art sector, hearing about their journeys throughout their careers, and hear about the process when it comes to creating new work or projects. Today, I am in Norwich, where I will be meeting Dolly Sen. She is an award-winning writer, artist, and filmmaker, where she has performed internationally and her films have been shown worldwide.
I'm 5'7". I'm brown. I'm of mixed heritage. I have dark short hair. I've had it cut short just very recently. That's greying. I have brown skin, but also patches of white because I've got vitiligo as well. And I'm also quite tattooed.
What has been your journey into art?
Well, it's a really long journey actually because I think I was born into it. My dad was an Indian musician. He was really very popular because he came to England in the 1950s and was like an Indian musician. So he worked for the BBC. He worked on the Beatles film Help. The Indian music you hear, that's my dad playing. And because he was into music, he was also into like being a film extra. He's an Indian man, and there wasn't many people of colour on TV and film in the 60s and 70s. So my dad got a lot of work that way. And then he got us involved. So the one I remember the best is being an extra on Emperor Strikes Back. And I was a child alien. It was just an amazing experience. You know, you see, a spaceship is your playground, basically. And I was on my way to being a doctor, but at age 14, I had my first psychotic episode and literally just left school. I haven't had any schooling after the age of 14. And basically for the next 16 years, up to my age of 30, I just was in my room, terrified to do anything, terrified to meet other people, to leave my front door, and terrified just to be alive. I was also in the psychiatric system, but that wasn't helping. In fact, it was making things worse. And when I hit 30, I decided to make a decision to either live or die because I couldn't see how my life could continue the way it was. Basically, I started to go to mental health coffee mornings and stuff like that. And there I started to kind of do a little bit of poetry writing. So, for example, I was writing poetry on loneliness to feel less lonely and trying to make sense of the world because it was a very hard world to live in because my mind was competing with like psychosis and the world and all sorts of things. And a lot of things didn't make sense. So I used creativity to begin to make sense of my life and experience. Around the year 2000, there was a grant giving thing because it was the millennium. So there was a lot of millennium grants where you were given either 1,000 or 2,000 to start something to help your community. So I thought I'm going to set up a theatre and film project. And with that money, I put on a play about a person who is in a psychiatric unit who says that the audience is there and everyone's saying there's no audience, but there is an audience. So it's kind of, I put on that play. But I also made a documentary about a man whose experience of schizophrenia, like his day-to-day life, which is on YouTube still, and had like something like thousands of views about his life. And because I was doing that, I started to meet other people who were mental health system survivors who were doing creative things. So that led me on to performing because that's a lot of what people were doing. And I became part of quite a unique mad run arts project called Creative Roots. And they did so many different things at Young Vic, the Royal Festival Hall. Our kind of crowning achievements that we put on a festival called Bonkers Fest in Camberwell. And had thousands of people attend. It was our way of saying, you say that mad people are a burden. Actually, no, we are part of the community and we are giving you something. We're giving you the right to be yourself, basically. So, and then I really want to learn how to be a filmmaker. So I did a degree in film. And then the ball has just kept rolling and rolling and rolling. My art's gone from trying to make sense of the world, navigate the world whilst being quite psychotic, and then it became a community thing, and then part of my activism.
What is your process when it comes to creating new work?
I make work in all sorts of different mediums. Literally anything I've done. Film, I've done, music, I've done writing, I've done sculpture, all sorts of different, I've done textile art. My head is a very entertaining place to be. It comes up with ideas just like that all the time, in fact. And sometimes I think, no, I won't pursue that. But if I think, I might turn that into reality, I just have to kind of think about what would be the best medium to accomplish that. So, for example, if it's something quite personal, I will write. If it's something that can be expressed visually, I will do that. But I did an art intervention at the DWP head office in London, and I think I used all sorts of different mediums. We used the medium of performance and visual art at our interaction. But I thought for the world to see it, it needed to be on film. So that piece of art, activism, the final product was a film. Dolly Sen was doing a festival on the theme of rage, and I thought, how could I show the rage of disabled people? And I thought, because I've done work with a charity can, I think the charity model of disability is problematic. So I have done an artwork called Help the Normals, which is a charity can with that name. From that, I kind of thought, actually, why don't I spell the word rage out of the charity collecting cans and on the label say why we're angry? It's quite easy to understand what the point is. If I get commissioned to do something, I just let my brain dwell on it for a few days, and then suddenly the ideas just come. What is the best way for me to communicate what I want to say? And it could be any art form, really. So it's not the art form that comes first, it's the idea of what the art form or medium should be is quite a bit later down the line. And my process, and I guess it isn't even conscious, is that I want to kind of explore what it means to be human. I want to touch the other human being, the humanness in other people. I've got a bit of humour in my work, but that's because that's how my brain works. We live in a pretty horrible world at the moment, and I want to bring beauty and art and love into the world, and that's the way I do it, through my art. But I also want to show where there is hidden violence and hidden power. That all goes into a pot, and give me a few days and maybe a little bit of chocolate. The ideas and the process starts happening by itself. It's not like I've got kind of rigid steps. It's very organic and flexible.
What are the biggest challenges?
The biggest challenges, I think, are twofold. I think the biggest challenge is just earning enough money to feed yourself. It depends what kind of art you do. I mean, disability art isn't that well funded, number one. But if you're more political in your work, that's even harder to fund. Like I say to people, the revolution will not be funded. It'll have to come in other ways. I'm lucky because my partner owns this house outright, so I don't have to pay rent or anything like that. I'm one of the lucky ones. I have some privilege, so I don't have to worry about rent every week or every month. So that gives me a little bit more freedom to choose what work I can do. There was a time where I just took everything that was given to me, or I searched for. It's just living day to day. Funding bodies having very inaccessible ways to get money, for example. I think the world, and the art world as well, doesn't understand disability politically. It doesn't understand it even personally. And I don't know why they won't change. I think is it willful ignorance? Is it like, oh, we already know what we're doing? I don't know what it is. It's not just the arts world, it's everywhere, in the media and all sorts of things. Yeah, I want my work to reach everyone, but that's the reasons I've done stuff like on the street, to engage with the ordinary person on the street. Like the big mainstream arts organisations and establishments are like this to disabled people, and I'm not sure why. I think partly it's because they'll have to become political. What you notice about the world, arts world and the world, is that those who have privilege are holding so tightly to it, they don't want to let it go. And I think that's part of the problem. That being the case, I think I just make art on the street for the people most of the time. And luckily, I get enough commissions and work to able to continue an art career as well. But that one day might stop and I might have to find a proper job, which will be awful. But because I've got a very creative mind and I think I'll be sacked on day 2. So yeah, I think there's a lot of challenges. You know, the way the world is at the moment is a challenge as well. So there's lots of challenges. And, you know, you have to understand intersectionality. It's not just being disabled artist. If you're a black disabled artist or a queer disabled artist or a working class disabled artist, you've got a harder time accessing a lot of spaces. And that needs to change, I think.
Show me an object that represents you or relates to your artwork. Can you tell us about it and why is it important to you?
I was in hospital, I think it was 2005 or 2006. Mobile phones started to have cameras and I was on a psychiatric ward at St Thomas's Hospital in London. It doesn't have a psychiatric ward now, but at the time it did. And I just, because it's so boring on a psych ward, I just started taking pictures of things. There's not much to do. A lot of people just drink tea and coffee. And I used just to take pictures of coffee and tea stains on all sorts of different surfaces around the ward. But I also was taking pictures of like where there was light, because I was just so desperate for light. And because I had a crisis, and I think my brother thought she needs something to do with her time, he works in IT and he gave me a computer, a desktop computer with Photoshop on it. And basically what I did was turn the images I had of coffee stains, I put those into Photoshop and I thought, what can I turn these into? So basically, playing around with Photoshop, I made my first visual piece of art, which is behind me. What I've done is learn about turning pain into something else. But for this piece of work, I said I've turned coffee stains into stars. So that's the magic of art. It can just do so much. It kind of reaches into being human very, very strongly. And it can change your mind. It can change all sorts of things. It can change the story you tell yourself about yourself. And that's the artwork that started it all off, really. And it made me want to be an artist because I was a writer and filmmaker at that point, but I wasn't a visual artist. So thanks to my brother, I can create something that can change into something else. So that's the work up there. It's been exhibited in a few places, and they exhibited it at London Bridge, and they printed it. It was like it's a digital piece of art onto metal, and they said, "Do you want it back?" So I said yes, and we put it up in our living room. So that's the start of my visual art journey, really. It means my path will always be under stars, you know.
What is your favourite place to visit?
This might sound a little bit facetious, but my imagination. So I'm a daydreamer. Sometimes reality isn't good enough, so I go into my head and create ideas, write poetry, think of the world being a better place and how that could happen. I would love to go to places where I've read about or where artists have done their work. So I'd love to go to lots of different places around the world. I want to go to Paris to see the art and understand the history of creativity there. I mean, I've been to Amsterdam and I've been to their art museums many times. It's anywhere. It's not necessarily doesn't have to be a physical place. It's just where art is, I think. We could do so much with our humanity. That's beautiful. And I think that, the world, the way the world is because of a lot of fear and ignorance. I can see the potential for beauty and love and stuff like that. And a good starting point is art, I think.
If you weren't an artist, what would you be?
If I weren't an artist, I would be dead. That's what my answer would be, because it saved my life when I first got into it. Basically, I've done a lot of work. I have done normal jobs, but I always am kind of bullied out because, for example, I've worked in mental health services. When I see bad practice happening, I will highlight it. And then nobody in that department will speak to me. So because of the way I am, I can't work a normal job. And I wouldn't want to anyway, because being a creative is such a beautiful world. It's the real world can't compete. It saved my life. It gave me a way to understand myself. For example, I've written a book about my life, and after I read my book, it was the first time I had love for myself. I was full of self-hate. I could see it as a story, and I was just a person doing the best with what the world had done to me, basically. First time I had empathy for myself, I started to have some love for myself. So that's what I mean. It can change the story you tell yourself, and it can change the story of the world as well. If I wasn't creative, I think I wouldn't be here. And that's quite intense to say, but that's the truth.
What's the one thing you would change about the visual arts sector?
I would change its elitism. Actually, I'll change everything. You know that really powerful quote is that you can't dismantle the master's house with the master's tools. So the art world can't change itself, I don't think, because it is part of the world it's in. There's not much humanity. There's a lot of elitism. There's a lot of greed, and there's a lot of really nasty stuff, things that you shouldn't celebrate about humanity. Art is subjective. You don't like the same stuff I like, possibly. Some things we might like and some things we don't. And all of that should be celebrated, and it isn't. It's very elitist. So I would change that kind of idea that the art world has to be an elitist world. Look at all the mad artists. They weren't celebrated in their life. They're celebrated when they're dead and sanitised. Do you think as a mad artist, is that my career route? That I will only be taken seriously when I'm dead? Or actually not being looked at all even, It has to say it's political, and it's part of the problem in society. It has to look at itself truthfully. So yeah, lots of things I would change.
How can people stay connected with Journey into Arts? People can stay connected by liking and subscribing to our YouTube channel. From there, they can watch all the latest videos and be alerted for when new videos get uploaded onto the channel.